Hey guys, this is Ed, Paul, and Anna of Current Brand Media, and we are here to tell you a little bit more about our sponsor.
Sportsball is a great subscription service geared towards minor league baseball fans. Each box features a different minor league team.
You get a box every 3 months with minor league baseball gear, including different styles of hats like Ed's favorite, the dad hat. The cost is less than $12 a month.
Proceeds from each box goes to More Than Baseball, the only nonprofit dedicated to the well-being of minor league baseball players.
We all know that Parents' Days are coming up this summer, so if you've got a mom or a dad or a grandma or a grandpa who are particularly difficult to buy for, but you know they're baseball fans, this is the answer, guys.
Meet your new favorite team at sportsballbox.com.
Is there anybody there?
You know, we love these hats. You and I both do. We understand that. You look at it, when you put it on, you don't see it anymore. Everybody else sees it. Everybody else sees it. So what are you really wearing? You know what you're wearing? In a lot of cases, in most cases, I would say, you're wearing the feeling that hat gives you.
What's up, Dad Hat Crew? Ed here, and on this episode, I give you guys a TV producer. He is a podcaster and a writer. His name is Craig Colby. That's right. We talked about his latest book that he has out now, guys. You guys got to go and take a look at it. I did put the link on the website, but the book is called All Caps, Stories That Justify an Outrageous, and guess what? Hat Collection. That's right. Stories That Justify an Outrageous Hat Collection. We go into this part one, get to know him as a person, as a writer, and then we go into a little bit about the book. So, guys, without further ado, I'll give you the episode. All right. Well, I want to welcome you guys to yet another episode of the Dad Hat Chronicles. My name is Ed, and with me today, I have Craig Colby. My friend, you are an author now. I mean, I have to call you an author because you wrote a book. But we're going to get into that. We're going to get into that in a minute. How are you doing, first of all?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's I'm enjoying being an author in addition to all the other things that I'm doing.
There's hope. We will talk about everything. But tell me, the first question, if you guys already know, like I'm going to ask is, how'd you become a fan of sports?
It's a different route than most people follow. I mean, most people, they played sports as a kid, so they watch sports, all of those things. I had a love for the Detroit Tigers when I was a boy growing up in Michigan. When I was, pre-public school and public school. I was 5 years old when the Tigers won the World Series in 1968. And I'd be lying if I said I remember everything about all the games. I remember the feeling that the Tigers gave everybody. I had that feeling. But I wasn't much into sports too much as a kid. My older brother was a big athlete. And, as the second child, you often push against what the oldest child does to create your identity. I was more of a comic book kid. And I thought I was hopelessly unathletic. But I had some friends who played football, so I'd play touch football with them. And I noticed that I wasn't bad at it. And then I could high jump a little bit, so I got a little taste for that. I ran a little bit in grade 9, but when I started playing football in grade 10 is when I really started to develop a love of sports. It started with football. My family is big football fans. And then once I started in that, I got into all of the other sports as well.
So let me ask you, because you are in Canada, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so when you're saying football, right? But I feel like we need to make sure that we talk about whether it was Canadian football or American football. Which one did you play?
Oh, I played Canadian football. We moved
Nice.
from Michigan to Thunder Bay, Ontario when I was 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And then in high school, I played 3-down Canadian football.
I love Canadian football. I'm a fan, so I watch it. It's sometimes some of the rules got to me at first when I started really watching Canadian football, right? Like the Rouge and all these other stuff. And I'm like, man, like this is fun. Like, the fact that like the wide receiver gets to have a head start, right? When to run, before the down, it's pretty awesome. And then the fact that there's only one less down than American football, it's pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's not a possession game. It's a big play game, right? The kicking game is huge. The kicking game in the NFL is is almost an afterthought. For the most part, you get like a 15, 20-yard return. The punts are almost all fair catches, but they have a 5-yard rule in Canadian football where you have to be 5 yards away when they catch it so they can run. So the kicking game, that third of the game, is much more dynamic than in the NFL or college ball.
It is a lot more exciting, I can tell you that. It's fun. The fact that the goalpost is at the beginning of the end zone also is very interesting. Because
the end zone's 25 yards long.
Yeah, it's
Right?
humongous.
I mean, yeah, an extra point would, like a 50-yard field goal would be like a 75-yard field goal. So yeah, that makes a difference too.
And I love when I see players just run into it. I find it the most hilarious things. Like even the professionals still get confused and get hit, which is awesome.
Yeah, it doesn't happen that often, but when it does,
But when it happens, it's
Yeah.
great. Okay, so you played as a kid. You played the Canadian style football. What position did you play?
started off, I was a 128-pound defensive guard. I'm very good at that position. I moved to linebacker the next year and was much happier at that. I played a little bit of running back, but I just blocked.
There's something about playing defense. It's just so much fun hitting people than
Yeah,
than
that
the
was
offense.
the best thing. Sacking the quarterback, there's nothing better than that.
There you go. Love it. Love it. So did you play any other sports? Did you follow any other sports?
I played a little bit of soccer.
Mhm.
And, I went to an athletic leadership camp when I was 16, and I played a little bit of rugby there. For the most part, I was a football player, a little bit of a soccer player. And then, I got into co-ed softball after that. I was also vice president of the student council. I was first clarinet, first chair in the band. I was involved, I did the school announcement. So I had like a broad base of things I was doing. It wasn't just sports.
Yeah, in high school and all of that, my extent of any kind of involvement was a year of high school baseball, and then I was in the AV team. That was my thing right there. It was like chess club and AV teams. Like I could as a dork as you can get. That was me. So I was
Awesome.
also a fan of comic books. Still am to this day. So listen, there's nothing wrong with a comic book. It is great stuff.
Well, people sure seem to be enjoying them now, don't they?
Yeah, how funny how that has come full circle now, right? How back in the day I was like, oh no, comic book. Look at them. Oh, Marvel is making a killing right now.
Yes. And I will tell you about my tiny little grudge against Marvel later in the show.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so tell me, you go to college. Does the love of sports still continue with you throughout that?
Oh, so much more. I went to the University of Windsor. My dad said I went to major in sport Detroit because you could just go across the river and see the Tigers, which I did all the time. And, my first experience going into Tiger Stadium was almost religious. I was trembling. Walking into that stadium I'd heard about for so long and had been following the Tigers and loved them, and sitting in that seat up in the upper deck, third base side, little pillar obstruction, afternoon game, glowing green grass, beautiful blue skies, the white uniforms with the blue sleeves and blue hats. It was like a painting come to life. I think I trembled the whole game. I loved it, fell in love, spent so much time watching baseball there, saw the Lions when they were good, saw the Tigers win the World Series. The Red Wings were the worst team in the league at the time. I remember going to a game against the Minnesota North Stars, and the Minnesota North Stars scored 4 times in the first 8 shots on net.
Jesus.
And when they announced the attendance, people booed. They booed themselves for coming to the game. Never seen it before or since, but they got better after that. So, really, as being able to go and be part of that experience is the stuff that really ignites fandom. And, that just lit me up. In high school, I was obsessed with it, but I don't know what the level beyond obsessed was, but that was me in university.
And that's same thing. It's like I don't think I've ever had an opportunity to not love sports. Every day I love sports. I love every sport. So I going to an event is such a such a fulfilling experience, even if they lose, right? Because at the same time, you're like, you feel down because they lose, or you feel high because they win. It is just, there's something about it. It's a love-hate relationship that a lot of times we have a lot with our favorite teams.
It depends on how they lose.
Oh, God, yeah.
My family came down in 1984. We were there to see it was Canadian Thanksgiving, which is earlier than American Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
But the Tigers would have had a playoff game against the Kansas City Royals if they hadn't swept it. That would have been, I think, on Friday night. And then Sunday, we had tickets to see the Denver Broncos against the Detroit Lions. And this is the first time my football crazy family had a chance to go to football together. Both my brothers, my older and younger brother, played football. We were all captains of the football team. Like, we were obsessed, and we went to see the Lions. And in my book, which we'll talk about later, I've got the stats now, but I think the Lions turned the ball over on 8 of 12 possessions and just got destroyed by the Broncos. And everybody was leaving and furious. And we went down, my brothers and I, behind the Lions bench, and people were throwing things. One of the linemen put his helmet on, and people were throwing programs and paper. And one of the linemen tried to yell back into the stands, and Gary Danielson, the quarterback who had thrown 5 interceptions, pulled him away. And it's just like this wave of invective going at the Lions. And in the middle of this, my older brother yelled, "Go Lions!"
Yeah. Still, we're like, yeah, I hate you. Go Lions.
Nothing was going to ruin his game.
Right.
So,
I'm a Cleveland Browns fan.
Oh, you have my
So you understand how it is, because here's the thing, though. I do know that you are a Steelers fan, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
I am a Steelers fan because Lions fans get another team. Every Lions fan knows.
Like, we root for the Lions, and then we also root for another team just because it is. Like, so my wife would be very happy with you, because she is from an area where it's like you either became a Steelers fan or a Browns fan, and she chose the Steelers. So
she made a good choice. Sorry.
Yeah, I tell her that she made a great choice, because obviously I have a lifetime of suffering as a Browns fan, so I get the hurt, right?
Yeah.
So I should pick up a different team as well, because I am.
I think you're entitled. You're entitled.
I think so. You know what? I like this rule. You're entitled. If your team is
Good
really
rule.
that bad, you're entitled to a different team as well to root for. So you grew up, it was like, did you go into sports as a career? What did you do afterwards?
I did. I still am, actually, after a long time.
Yeah.
When I graduated, I took 2 degrees at university. One was communications and English literature. And I intended to get into the media, but I knew how hard it was.
Yeah.
And the University of Windsor offered what they called a special BCom. It was to compete. I have heard it was to compete with a bigger university's MBA program. You could get a business degree in 2 years. So I took that too. And when career day came and I was starting to look around for jobs, a woman that I knew from working in the residence, I was a resident assistant. She was the head resident at one of the places. She had gone on to work at TSN, which had started, I'm going to say 3 years earlier from career day, somewhere around there. And she had the big TSN banner, and I went up and talked to her, Mary Ellen Carlisle, and she brought in my resume. It was the fall of '87, and she said, "I'm bringing it in. I'm giving it to Scott Moore on Tuesday, and you have to call him by Thursday." So I did. I called him by Thursday, started a dialogue. He said, "Keep calling me so that you're top of mind. The people who call are the ones who get the jobs." And so I would call every 2 to 4 weeks. And there was an opportunity to work at they were sending people to the '88 Olympics in Calgary to backfill for them. I declined it because I wanted to finish my degree.
Mm-hmm.
But I kept bugging them. And then after a disastrous 4 months in radio, they hired me, and I started at the Sports Network, Canada's version of ESPN, on January 4th, 1989. And I spent 5 years working in sports television, started watching highlight packs. As a baseball fan in the summer, if you worked the late shift, you could come watch 2 early games and then 4 late games. And then by the time I finished, I was producing editions of Sports Desk, now called Sports Center, because ESPN bought a piece. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. It's just, you just like, that's it. Like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I want to do. And nothing's going to stop me.
Yeah. I mean, plenty of things could have stopped me. I almost went into insurance. New York Life was recruiting me really heavily. And there was a fork in the road between New York Life. The agents were opening up their bank books, and when people had those things, and showing me their bank accounts and pictures of their boats on the Florida Keys. And then there was TSN offering me not enough to live on. And when I told my contact in New York Life, this is what I was going to do, and I told him what I was making, he said, listen, I'm not talking to you as a guy trying to hire you. I'm talking to you as like an older brother. You can't do this. But I did it. And it worked out. So
it's so what do you do now?
now I'm an independent producer.
Nice.
After spent 5 years at TSN, then 10 years at Discovery. And then I went independent and worked for people where we launched the first 4 HD channels in Canada. And then we got bought, and I was in charge of the content for a nature channel. Now I'm independent. I've been independent for 6 years. I do a lot of different things. I'm right now, and still in sports, I'm the executive producer for the National Lacrosse League's broadcasts through Dome Production, their streaming broadcast. The National Lacrosse League was nominated for a hashtag award for best online experience. We work with two other production companies who do live sports productions, but I've got most of the Canadian teams and basically Buffalo under my watch.
And this is the indoor like National Lacrosse League that we're
it's
talking
box
about.
lacrosse. Yep.
Man, is that exciting stuff.
So
that
good.
I'm talking about like there is some like hard hitting, just great sport. It's like hockey, but with lacrosse sticks. And you know what?
Fast. There's so much scoring. There's, the puck, the face off has to happen. I believe it's 25 seconds after the last goal is scored. So you have time for 2 replays and a hero shot, and you're back at it.
Off you go. That's insane. And then the fact that the goalie is so decked out and like, can barely move. It's just,
he looks like a fridge.
He does like,
yeah.
I'm like, how is that person able to move? And then you see like when they take everything off, I'm like, you're the size of a stick,
Some of them are and some of them aren't.
Yeah. But it's awesome. I love
it.
The
athletic ones are crazy good athletes.
Yeah.
The game is incredible. If you haven't seen one, just watch one.
Oh,
they're so good.
And there's so many teams. Like, I mean, you have a lot of teams now, and the popularity of them just keeps growing and growing and growing.
Yeah. I didn't know much about it before I was hired for this last year, but I'm a fan now. The tough part is I'm working on the broadcast. I don't get to go to the games. I may just have to go to one of the games and let them take care of themselves.
Yeah, like, I mean, you got Colorado, you got Las Vegas, Desert Dog. That's a new team, right? The San Diego Seals, Saskatchewan Rush. So you got a lot of cool teams and a lot of cool names out there. So huge fan of the
Toronto
league.
Rock. If you're a Rock guy, there's a team for you.
There you go. Like, and that's the closest one. I mean, actually, I got Georgia, which is closer to me, and here in North Carolina, the Georgia Swarm as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of cool names out there. So, again, like I said, I'm a huge fan.
And really good hats too.
That's right. And as you can see behind me, I don't have enough hats as it is. So
mine aren't in the picture, but I have with you.
This is a great segue right here, because then you decided, that you wanted to write a book. And let me ask you this. And I'm sure a lot of people will ask you, like, hey, that's great. I was like, what made you think, I was like, I'm going to write a book? Like, what happened to you? Tell me.
Well, it started with as many things do these days, it started with the pandemic.
Yep.
And not the job I had lined up was to direct a 2-camera shoot on a luxury cruise going from Argentina to Portugal with 5 days off in the middle of the Atlantic. And it had like a submarine and 2 helicopters. It was just the sweetest gig. I was doing it for Discovery Channel. And then the cruise ships went away, and then the show went away, and then they fired everybody at that production company, and another production company that hired me went away. All my work was just disappearing.
Wow.
So I had to, I was sitting in my little den here trying to create content to remind people I existed. And to my right are 2 racks of hats. I've collected hats, not the way I think you collect hats. I've collected hats that have come with experiences.
Yep.
So I said, got all these hats. Got all this time. I'm going to wear a different hat every day until the lockdown's lifted and we get to be together again. So I took the first hat. It was a Pittsburgh Pirate stovepipe hat from the 70s with P for pandemic. And I took a picture of it and put it on Facebook. And later that day, all these people started posting their hats. So every day I would post a hat and people would post their hats. And we had this little hat club. And it was a time when we were in isolation, it was a way to be connected to people. Then I started writing stories, just a little paragraph or two about the hat. I'd often write stories for Facebook that went over well. I studied communications and English literature. I know how to write. My stories have always been well received. They're emotional. And this went on and on and on. And, the people who got into it, there's a now friend of mine, Jim Nottingham. I've never met him. I've never had a conversation with him. He's a good friend. We objected to a distant relative of mine's political opinions together. But he would post his Vietnam veteran hats. And, there were a lot of them. And he would tell us that, when he came home from Vietnam, there were young women at the airport who just come back from Vietnam, and he was all happy to see him and say yes, and they'd spit on him. So, heartbreaking stories. But every time he put up a hat like that, people would say, "Thank you for your service." He ran out of hats about 35 days in. But he opened up his garage to get bobbleheads and album covers and pictures of autographs, anything he could do to stay in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And later, he started sharing more of his story. He would write posts about his story, which received unanimous warm support for this hero, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who sacrificed his youth for other people. So that was a wonderful feeling to be part of that, to have initiated that. But I was also worried.
Crazy. Yeah.
Because so many of my work colleagues were on Facebook with me. And I thought, all this stuff that I'm putting out isn't helping me get jobs. I'm going to be the crazy hat guy. I'm going to be the crazy hat guy in my industry. But, you're in for a dollar, you're in for a dime. I just kept doing it. And 125 days later, I ran out of hats. And I thought, here it comes, right? Here, you have too many hats. Why is your wife still with you? All of the things I'm sure that, Ed, you have heard.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not what happened.
None.
What happened was people said that they missed it. They were sad that it was over. My wife's cousin said that it replaced the horoscope as the first thing she read during the day. And my cousin Julie, who writes mysteries, said, you should write a book. Put it in the comments. And I said, no one's going to read this book. Who's going to buy this book? And all these people said, I would. And my brother, who's the opinions page editor for the Toronto Star, said, I think, and he has written a best-selling book with PK Subban's dad.
Nice.
Yes, about how his kids got into the NHL. He said, I think you should write it. And then my mom, who wrote a column for the paper in Thunder Bay for 25 years, asked me to write the book. She had written her own book. She had had book launches. She loved my brother's book launch. I knew it would mean a lot to her. And I knew she wanted that for me. So I said, if I can get the permissions to use the hats, because I know a little bit about legal clearances from my television career, I said, I'll write the book. So New Era was in right away. And then I can't remember the order, but Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NHL, the NBA, Minor League Baseball, Bell Media, which owns the Discovery Channel and TSN logos here, Blue Ant Media, who had let me go in 2017. I still have a good relationship with them. I mean, I understood the decision.
Yeah.
Wasn't me, it was the business decision. They gave me the permission to use their hats. The Globe Theatre in London, England, Peterbilt, everybody except a little fishing resort near Thunder Bay and Marvel Comics, who would not answer any of my requests. But I get it. I get it. They're busy. They don't know me. They don't know me anything. I'm still looking forward to seeing Ant-Man. So I had enough to write the book. So then I had to sit down and write it. So really, it's a memoir told through hats, but really the stories are about me, but they're designed to get people to think about their own lives. And that's the feedback that that's a tough trick to pull off. But that's what I'm hearing. So, it was a bit of a daunting task. I never really would have thought to write a memoir if people hadn't asked for it. But, as a professional storyteller, I've been nominated for a Canadian Screen Award for writing. I know how to write, and I've sat around a table with beers for people, and I know what stories I have that people respond to. But to, get a story for every hat and make it into a cohesive story with a beginning, middle, and end, each little individual story to have one, and then the whole book to have one. And then to try to make it not just about hats, but something different. My favorite writers are like Bruce Springsteen, who makes these songs that sound happy, but really they have something else going on underneath it. And that's really what the book is. The book starts with, moving to Thunder Bay and having kids throw rocks at our house and yell, Yankee, go home. You know, I was an 8-year-old little blonde kid, and you know, the kind who should fit in everywhere in Western society, being told you don't belong. And it was very instructive in how I saw the world, but not an easy thing to live with. But then you make friends. It's a story about friendships. You know, I think your audience will relate to a lot of sports trips and playing sports and friendships and falling in love. But you know, the things that love you are also the things that will break your heart. And there has been some very particular heartbreak in my life. Some of them I think are maybe not everyone's gone through, but I think everyone knows about these things and can relate to them. So, you know, I know it's working because I got an email from a gentleman who I don't know. The book was recommended to him. He sent me a note out of the blue. I'm easy to find through my website, colbyvision.net. And he said, you know, I read your book and I can relate to all of these things. And, you know, my wife and I, we're both avid readers. We wanted to have a little book club, but I read nonfiction. She reads fiction. There's not a book we can read together. And she looked over at me in bed last night and I had tears in my eyes. He said, that's not something that happens to me. I've got nothing against it. But he credited it to his Germanic background. I can't speak for the Germans, but he did. And she asked him what he was reading. And he told her what the chapter was about and what the book was about and saw how moved he was. And she said, well, that's the book I'm reading next. So they were able to form their book club out of that. So that's the stuff that I'm glad works in the book. I think I've answered about 4 of your questions when
you did. That's amazing. I love it. Go ahead. That's fine. And I love the fact that, like, you know, the human connection, right? That, you know, not just books, but like, you know, other things as well, that you can connect and you have that connection, and you're able to relate. You know, that's what, for a good book, I love that, you know, and that's key.
Well, that's what the book is about. You know, it's about the human connection and what happens when they're severed. And it's about what's the most important thing in life. And, you know, sports are on that list if it means something to you. You know, when you think about sports, they are really a great uniter. People who, you know, in a time that's so divided, you know, if you're at a game, you're not asking the next person next to you who they voted for. You know, you're asking, you know, you're high-fiving them when your team scores. You know, when the Toronto Raptors won the championship here, this city was the greatest place to be in the world. Everybody loved each other. We loved each other.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, getting that championship hat, it was the most popular item in town. Like, that was the thing to have. It was incredible. So sports is on it. But, you know, you start young and sports are everything. And then you get married and you have kids and you have wonderful and devastating experiences and you see things in a different way.
Yeah, that's so true. It's, you know, you grow up and sometimes, you know, sports is the uniting part of it. Cause I remember, you know, you say the Toronto Raptors, but I remember when I was in Cleveland with my wife, and we remember vividly when the Cavaliers won the championship, right? Like, I mean, all those years of just being so close and not being able to get to the mountaintop and winning it. And then when we went outside, because me and my wife, we went there to the arena, but they were in Golden State, but we were in the arena watching it and how loud it got. And like, I was high-fiving and hugging people I've never met in my life and never will, and I will not know their names, but it was like you said, I didn't care about their political affiliations or, you know, any of that, right? It was, all of it was pandemonium because it was great. And it was like, we finally are able at the top and said, finally, Cleveland won something. It was the greatest feeling in the world.
Oh, I think everyone was happy for Cleveland. Just the road you guys had been on with LeBron James going away and then coming back. I think everyone, you know, we are all Cleveland tonight. Everyone was really happy for Cleveland.
Yeah, and it was awesome. You know, I wish we could get there I wish we would have gotten there with the Indians. We were so close, right? And I've said this a couple of times because it was the Cubs. I'm like, listen, if it was another team, it would have been a whole lot worse feeling for me. But the fact that it was the Chicago Cubs, who's also been through something the same way, right? Like, they've been so long without winning a championship. I was upset that my team didn't win, but I was not as upset.
Now, did you get a Cavs championship hat?
I got the hat. I got the newspaper. I think I got I bought the days like the next day. You know how the for us was the plain dealer was like selling all of these newspapers about the championship. So I bought like 10 of those and I gave some to my friends. I got a T-shirt, a hat, a pin. I went crazy and bought a whole bunch of stuff and even a pennant.
And here's the funny thing about hats in particular. We love these hats. You and I both do. We understand that. You look at it, when you put it on, you don't see it anymore. Everybody else sees it. So what are you really wearing? You know what you're wearing? In a lot of cases, in most cases, I would say, you're wearing the feeling that hat gives you.
I hope you guys enjoy that episode with Craig, part 1. Okay, part 2 is next week, so you guys got to come back and listen to that one. Make sure you guys go to his website. Okay, it is kobevision.net. Okay, kobevision.net. All of his information is there. Twitter, Instagram, and the book, all caps. Okay, the book is called All Caps. Make sure you guys go and check it out. All right, it is in digital form, hard copy, and paperback, so you guys got your options to get your book there. Before I go, though, you guys gotta get your dad joke of the episode, and here it is. What dinosaur is a writer's best friend? A thesaurus. All right, I see myself out. And guys, until then, keep on grinding and always support the minor leagues. See ya.
This podcast is part of the Curved Brim Media Network. Here are some of the other members of Curved Brim Media.
Hi, this is Ed Rivera of the Dad Hat Chronicles. Join me as I interview people just like you and players, coaches, GMs on the path that led you to become a fan of the sport.
I'm Paul Caputo, and on the Baseball by Design podcast, I talk to minor league baseball teams, designers, and other super interesting people about what these minor league baseball logos mean, and I talk a little bit about ice cream helmets.
What's up, Bucketheads? I'm Anna DiTomaso, and each week on the Baseball Bucket List podcast, I speak with a different fan about their favorite baseball memories, what the game means to them, and what's left to check off on their baseball bucket list.
Hey guys, this is Patrick Larson from the Minor League Baseball Hat History Series, and in every episode I go through the history of minor league teams through my personal collection of hats. You can find me on Twitter at PatLarson1. I hope you guys enjoy.
This is Patrick
and Corey
of BaseballMapper.com, and we have made an interactive map to help highlight all baseball teams from the majors down to collegiate summer leagues.
We want to bring you closer to baseball. So get on the site and find a team near you today.
Learn more about Curved Brim Media at curvedbrimmedia.com.